So, a while back, I made a video on Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate's underwater hunting system, breaking it down to its core issues and then presenting you all with revisions I believed would improve the overall gameplay experience. My motivations behind producing the video were 3 Ultimate is my favorite Monster Hunter, and I felt it'd be a shame for a concept with so much potential to be left dead in the water. God, shut up. One may assume my reasons behind remaking it is because I felt the original was outdated, and you could not be more incorrect. Yes, that video was made when I was still using a VTech Nitro notebook to produce my content, so it's very rough around the edges, but in it, all of my criticism was legitimate and my revisions constructive and meaningful. And yeah, that was a joke. VTech manufactures cordless phones and toys, not computers. But Mono, isn't a phone a computer? Man, I don't know. Leave me alone. It's just that since I released that video, the Monster Hunter franchise has evolved in a manner I never could have anticipated, which led me to conceptualizing even more ways Capcom could improve upon hunting in the deep. For the sake of allowing this video to stand on its own, I'm going to first quickly summarize the content of how to fix underwater hunting, and then, directly after, I'll delve into some of those aforementioned new ideas. If you'd like to understand the nuance behind the revisions I will be presenting within this episode, be sure to give the first underwater hunting video a watch. I'll link it in a card above and in the description below. That video is a part of an archive series of decryption episodes uploaded to one of my earlier YouTube channels. So again, its production value does not match that of my current content, yet still, it's definitely worth a watch. I began how to fix underwater hunting by first outlining the major problems with the mechanic as is, those being the limiting controls, terrible depth perception, and crowded maps, all resulting from a gameplay system that generally was not very well thought out. To fix these issues, I suggested Capcom institute a control scheme specific to underwater movement, design maps to be more open, and create items specific to the water so that the player could approach submerged encounters with just as much freedom as those on land. The underwater control scheme I proposed went a little something like this. Keep in mind, I'll be presenting this in regards to Nintendo's controller layout. Holding the analog stick and tapping B will cause your hunter to dash in that corresponding direction. Holding B will cause your hunter to dash directly backwards. This is basically an underwater backstep. And holding L will not only activate the target camera, but will also automatically pivot your hunter to face the monster. In addition, I also suggested the Capcom postulate mechanics to accommodate for the sluggish nature of underwater movement, as well as fleshing out underwater combos so each weapon felt just as nuanced as they are on land. As for our underwater arsenal, I stated Capcom should design items specifically for aquatic use and then give them their own separate pouch. For example, in Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, players were unable to use tools such as bombs and traps underwater. Instead of omitting these integral items altogether, they should instead be replaced with counterparts that theoretically make sense working in water. So, instead of trapping a monster in a pit, trap it in ice. Or instead of using barrel bombs to set off an explosion, use repercussion bombs to generate a vortex. Before I begin presenting newer ideas, I'd like to go back and refine some of the ones I introduced in the last video. The only change would be to the controls. Instead of the hunter dashing in whichever general direction the player is holding the analog stick, certain movements would be tied to specific directions. Holding the stick up and tapping B will result in the hunter dashing upwards, downwards, left to the left, and right to the right. Holding B is still a backwards dash, but now the forward dash will be specifically mapped to quickly double tapping B. I get the impression that Capcom severely underestimated the amount of deliberation that should go into making hunting in 360 degrees work. Monster Hunter can already get pretty crazy with its movements, so if it were to jump into an entirely different plane, I think it's only natural the controls become more intricate to match that increased complexity. Free use underwater controls were just too general, and while my initial revisions were definitely an improvement, I believe these newer changes would result in a scheme that'd give the player the perfect amount of control during a hunt. They'd have multiple inputs for specific movements, which would make maneuvering during battle more intuitive. You can't yawn and say, "Oh my gosh, these controls suck, I hate underwater hunting, Capcom, why did you put this in the game?" if you're given all the tools to adequately handle any situation. As a matter of fact, we could take this idea to the next level and allow for the player to dash forwards and backwards in whichever direction by holding the analog stick and double tapping or holding B respectively. Monster Hunter World introduced a lot to the series, and while I wasn't the biggest fan of many of the changes Capcom implemented earlier on, I eventually came to appreciate them as I progressed through the game. My favorite new addition to the series has to be this idea of a universal tool, a gameplay mechanic that's useful to all hunters, regardless of which weapon type they're using. World introduced us to the Slinger, a wrist-mounted crossbow that could be used to shoot various types of ammo. Monster Hunter World Iceborne built upon the Slinger mechanic with the introduction of the Clutch Claw, a grappling hook that could be used to tenderize a monster's flesh, making it easier to break its parts, or redirect and launch a monster into the surrounding environment, resulting in a topple. Monster Hunter Rise, the upcoming installment in the series, has provided players with a new universal tool called the Wire Bug, an insect that produces a tether-like silk that can be used for free movement in the air and on the ground. These universal tools are how I believe Capcom can make movement underwater as fluid and addictive as it is on land. Develop a universal tool to accommodate underwater hunting and heighten on land hunting. But Mono, what could this universal tool possibly be? I'm racking my brain trying to come up with ideas, but I'm getting nowhere fast. Relax, homie. I've already started developing one, and I'm calling it the Hunting Anchor. This tool will behave akin to World's universal tool. In Monster Hunter World Iceborne, Capcom gave players the ability to use the Slinger with their weapons drawn. By pressing the left trigger or clicking the right analog stick, the hunter would enter this standstill aiming mode, where they could shoot Slinger ammo or fire a claw shot to grapple onto a monster. The Hunting Anchor would work in a similar manner. It would hang from their waist when not in use, and by pressing the left trigger or clicking in the right stick, depending on which weapon class they're using, the hunter would then begin swinging the anchor. The player would then take aim and eventually launch the anchor by pressing A. After this point, the anchor would behave differently depending on whether the hunt is on land or underwater. For hunts underwater, if the anchor doesn't connect with the target, it'll slowly begin sinking and the hunter can either reel it in or reel themselves towards it. This will be essential for fast movement while submerged. For hunts on land, the anchor is only useful if it connects with a target. For example, if you were to snag onto a Rathalos tail while it was grounded, you could quickly tap A again to wrench the anchor back towards the hunter. This action would tenderize that monster's body part, similar to a clutch claw weapon attack, and if enough damage was done already, it would simply break the body part. It should be noted, however, that the anchor only tenderizes if the monster is already grounded. Now here's the cool part. If a hunter were to hit a monster with the anchor while in the air, they'd inflict a special kind of damage that'd build to what's essentially a new type of mount I'm calling grounding. You can probably already tell where I'm going with this based on its name alone. After inflicting enough damage, the player would be able to launch the anchor via a special charged shot that would wrap it around the monster. At this point, the player would mash the Y button to drag the monster down and hold the right bumper to brace themselves when it begins struggling or roars. Once a certain threshold is reached, the hunter can snatch the monster out of the air altogether, resulting in a topple. This special charged shot could be used on monsters underwater as well, but instead of the hunter snatching a monster out of the air, their goal would be to tighten the anchor's bind so that the monster is momentarily immobilized, just as it would be if it were to be toppled. I'm calling this type of mount restraining. So, on land, players can perform typical mounts alongside grounding mounts, and underwater, they can perform restraining mounts all via the hunting anchor. I believe the implementation of all these revisions, alongside the addition of a universal tool like the Hunting Anchor, would effectively solve all of the issues with 3U's underwater hunting system, allowing a hunter to not only do more on land, but just as much in the water. What's exciting about addressing underwater hunting is that this isn't the only way to solve the problem. I mean, with Monster Hunter Rise, Capcom just introduced another entirely new mechanic with the Palamute companion. I'm sure there are tons of different ways one could tackle this problem if they were to approach it with the idea of this rideable ally in mind. Dogs are excellent swimmers after all. As for those of you watching who are absolutely fuming at the prospect of underwater hunting making a comeback, I again want to remind you that the Monster Hunter franchise has and is continuing to evolve in ways we never could have expected. This series has become a global phenomenon, and that's the result of its development team's dedication to making each installment as distinct and complete as possible. There's no way Capcom would develop and publish the technical marvel that is Monster Hunter World, and then go on to revive and old gameplay mechanic just to half-ass it. If underwater hunting were to return in a future title, I've no doubt the company would do whatever it could to ensure the system was as developed and complete as possible. I don't care how much time passes, nor how many Monster Hunters Capcom releases, because until I get another game focused on the mechanic, I will never stop hoping for underwater hunting to make a comeback. I said it once and I'll say it again. This is a concept with too much potential to simply be left dead in the water. Is the video not over? What's going on? As many of you already know, next month is not only going to be the 16th anniversary of the Monster Hunter series, but also the launch of its latest installment, Monster Hunter Rise. If you couldn't already tell, I am a huge fan of this franchise, and considering how monumental this march will be for it, I wanted to do something special. Gasp! Is that a special event I see looming on the horizon? That's right, folks. I am so proud to announce the very first Week of Cryptic special event. Oh my god! All new MonoCRYPTIC content? All week long? More information on this special event will be revealed come the end of this month, but until then, be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss the festivities. Like the video if you liked the video, and dislike it if you didn't. Comment down below letting me know what you think of my underwater hunting revisions, as well as leaving any general thoughts. The links to my social media can be found in the description below, including one in my Discord server where you can have an intimate one-on-one conversation with Mr. Cryptic himself. And again, be sure to subscribe to show your support for Decryption and the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Take care.